Thank you for coming. We are low tech tonight. We don't have our normal funding for atoms, so we told our Dutch scientists to pretend they're American and talk loud. Um, I'm going to introduce the first scientist. I asked them about the music. Hold on. No, not good. And they're going to tell you about our CritiQuest program. For those of you who don't know, we are the See and Learn Foundation. We run programs like this throughout the month of October because we have a dive group in the back where we want to come back to understand that in October, we do the program with every other night presentations by different scientists, lots of marine presenters. And then you have the opportunity to do hands-on field projects with scientists, diving, hiking, different things. But all of our scientists, including these during this short program, are also working with our school children because they are the future stakeholders of the island, and we realize the importance of that. So we're going to get started. I'm going to introduce the first scientist, because I also know his name from knowing him for many years, off the top of my head. This is Michiel Boeken, and I'm going to let him take it from there.
Thank you. As said, I'm Michiel Boeken. I lived here on island for 2 years, 15 years ago, as a principal of Saba Comprehensive School. And, well, of course, I fell in love with the unspoiled queen. Actually, you get 4 short presentations tonight. First, one from me to introduce our project. Then Lucas is going to tell about these amazing insects. Marco and Micha will follow. And Ida is for the general support, just like me. Saba is the unspoiled queen, and we can see it everywhere. Everywhere we see an unspoiled queen. And when the queen is unspoiled, our aim is to preserve this unspoiled queen. But how to preserve the unspoiled queen? Well, you can focus on many different aspects. You can focus on landscape or architecture or whatever. But as biologists, we of course focus on biodiversity. And for those who don't know what is biodiversity, the official description by the UN Convention on Biological Diversity is the diversity within species, between species, and of ecosystems, including plants, animals, bacteria, and fungi. So we especially focus on the biodiversity between species. So what is one species? What is another species? But also within species, we are looking. So, for instance, Marco found an aphid, a yellow aphid, but one of the aphids was not yellow, but green. It's the same species, but the green one is an older generation, and the newer generation is a yellow generation. Diversity you can find everywhere, in plants, in fungi. We are looking in animals, and especially in the invertebrate animals. So not in reptiles or birds, but in insects and slugs and all these different groups. It's largely unknown in Saba. To give an example of my field of work, of beetles, there were, when I'm right, 63 different beetles described for Saba, and the estimation is that there will be about 450. Well, and in the groups of tonight, it's much worse. So how do you have to preserve something you don't know it exists? And that is the background of this whole project, to make much more clear what is living on Saba. There were a few things before. In 2022, I came for 8 weeks here to Saba, and one of the objectives was to collect as much as possible for different specialists. Most of the things the insects I collected are named on species by now, but not yet published. In 2023, the Naturalis, that's the big biodiversity center of the Netherlands, organized a Estafette expedition, relay expedition to Bonaire. Every 2 weeks, a new team was flown in Bonaire during almost half a year. And well, the big publication, about 420 pages, will come this month, I guess. Yeah. And some of the members of the Bonaire Estafette expedition asked me, because I'm quite well informed about Saba, well, can't you organize something like this on a much nicer island than for actually Naturalis said, well, perhaps within a few years we organize a next expedition, but then to Curacao or Aruba. And many people said, well, we have seen those dry islands, we want to see something more green. And so I was in 2023 in summer here, and I spoke to Lynn, how do you think about this? And so we began to organize, and well, that resulted in the organization of the Saba Estafette expedition, and it was renamed by Lynn as the Critter Quest, especially this part. The organization is like this. There will be 8 teams, varying from 2 to 4 persons, every time for 2 weeks on the island. Every team has every team member has his or her own specialty. The first 2 teams were here in October during See and Learn. They gave presentations as well, found many new species. Especially the second team was specialized in springtails, and there was no springtail known from the whole Dutch Caribbean. So they guess they are still busy, but they guess they found 40 different species in that group. The other groups coming from January through March. So now we have the first group here. And there are some objectives. First of all, to find all these unknown insects and all other critters living on Saba. Also, to identify possible invasive and perhaps also harmful species. And especially in the group, in this first group, that's very common, for plant parasites are traveling all over the world. And a third objective of the whole project is to share the knowledge, for it might be nice when we in Holland know about 60 new species of cicadas Marco found, but when you don't know about it, and you don't know what is the consequence of these species for our gardens and so on, we don't have any use of it. And of course, as Lynn said, we like to organize kids activities and field projects when it's desired. So when you have a garden and you are curious about what's living there, or even in-house, invite us. We have now the plant parasites. The next group coming in this Friday is specializing in snails and slugs and land flatworms, very harmful creatures. And the group after that has a spider expert. So all kinds of groups will run until the end of March. So this was my first presentation, and now we are shifting to Marco's one. Lucas, sorry. Yeah.
So good evening, everybody. My name is Lucas Alferink, and I work for the Dutch Plant Protection Organization, which is part of the Ministry of Agriculture. And I work there on whiteflies and skill insects. But tonight I'm gonna talk only about skill insects and give you a small introduction about this species group. And at the end of my presentation, I will give you an overview or give you some examples of species we found so far on the island of Saba. So the skill insects, they're in the order of Cocomorpha. And then you have like two groups. You have like the Archaeococcoids. They're like the more ancient ones, like the ancient skill insects. So you have like these kinds of species. And then you have like the Neococcoids, and they're like the more developed skill insects. So there are maybe some of you know some of these species, and like 95% of all the described species are in this group. And I will give you now some examples of some of the neococcoids. I will talk about the families and some of their characteristics. So the first one are the armored skill insects. They are called Diospedidae in Latin. And what characterizes this family is that they have like a scale on the body which is loose. So you can flip the scale away, and then you have like the insect is still there. So here you have like, so this is the insect, and you flip the scale over here, and then the insect is over there. And when you want to identify these skill insects, you have to make microscopic slides. And when you view them under the microscope, it looks like this. And it's actually, as you can see, it has no legs. So there's no legs, so there's actually only a sac with a mouth. So it only, feeds on plant sap and it lays eggs. That is what it does. And the other family are the mealybugs. They do have legs as adults, so they can walk, but they are very slow. And they produce a lot of wax. So, and as you can see on the pictures on the left, they can be very noxious. And then we have the soft skill insects, and they're called Coccidae in Latin. And so they don't have a hardened skill, and they don't produce wax, but they sometimes have like a sclerotized body, like over here, or they produce like this more hard wax, like over there. We found actually some species of Ceroplastus on the island of Saba already. So maybe 3 or 4 species. Another feature about skill insects is that they have like extreme sexual dimorphism, which means that the males and females, they are morphologically completely different. So yes, so here are 3 species. So these are the females. So you have like a mealybug, you have like an armored skill insect, and this is one of the archaeococcoids, the ancient ones. And then the males look like this. So, for example, in the armored skills, so the female is actually what I said, a sac with a mouth that lays eggs, and this is a complete, like developed insect, the male. So it has wings, it has antennae, it has legs, so completely different. So and then the question arises. So skill insects are often called that they are a nuisance, that they are pests. So why is this? Well, for one thing, they are easily transported. So with plant material, so most of the species they are attached to the plant. They do not walk. They're stuck to the plant. So when you trade a plant from one part of the world to another part of the world, then it can introduce can become introduced there. They're also easily overlooked. They are quite small when there's like a small infestation. So, like with an inspection at an airport, people might not see them. And many species are extremely polyphagous, which means that they can feed on like 300 different species of different plant families. So all this together, oh yeah, some species can also produce parthenogenetic. So there only one female is enough to start a colony. So all this together leads to, yeah, introduction into new habitats. And this is why many species of skill insect are now cosmopolitan, which means that they are found everywhere, almost everywhere in the world. Most of them are from tropical origin, so they cannot live outside in temperate areas, but then they are found in hot houses, greenhouses. And what also is with skill insects, they often have like, I told you about the skill or the wax or the sclerotized skin, so they have like a resistance to chemical control. So that's also a problem. And also, when they are introduced into new habitats, there are no natural enemies. So now I want to give you an example of another island. It's in the Atlantic Ocean. This is Tristan da Cunha. So it's like over here, so between Africa and South America. And there you have these endemic trees, Filica arborea. And there are endemic finches over there. They feed on the fruits of this endemic tree. So this was all like there was no harm to these species. But then this guy came around, this soft skill insect. And then this paper was published. Severe impact of introduced skill insects on the island trees threatens endemic finches as the Tristan da Cunha archipelago. So this species is a soft skill insect. It's called Coccus hesperidum. And this species can reproduce parthenogenetic. So but what I said earlier, one female is enough to start a colony. And there were no native skill insects known from these islands. So the flora and fauna was not adapted. So what happened then is that the trees, the Filica arborea trees, they died. And the soft skill insects were not only on the trees, but also on the ferns. So this is on the ferns. And what you can see is that there's a production of sooty mold. So the soft skill insects, they produce sugar, what they don't need. They like push it out. And then fungi are growing on the honeydew. And this is called sooty mold. And what happens then is that the plant cannot do its photosynthesis. So yeah, the main problem is actually the growing of sooty molds on the leaves. So the trees died, the older trees died. So this completely changed the population structure of the trees. So the bigger trees were affected, but there were seedlings of the smaller trees. So there were only like smaller trees left. But there's a but, because the finches, they were seen feeding on the soft scale insects. So maybe this also comes into like a, yeah, it is resolved by nature. It comes into balance. So in 2022, this book came out, Encyclopedia of Skill Insect Pests. So it's already in the name, like pests. It's always about pests. But they say in this book that only like 7% of the species described is actually a pest. And they also say that there are many undescribed species, especially in the tropics. And that there are even some beneficial skill insect species. And I want to give you some examples of the beneficial ones. So you have this species, Margellina hellenica. It lives on pines in the Mediterranean area. And it's used to produce pine honey. So you have like these skill insects on the trees, and they produce again the honeydew. And then the honeybees, they collect the honeydew and then the beekeeper can make the honey, which is called the pine honey. Another is this one, Pulvinaria mesambretomi. It's a soft skill, and there are like experiments going on to introduce it as a biological control agent against invasive ice plant species. For example, also in the Mediterranean. And of course, Dactylopius coccus, which is some kind of mealybug on the prickly pear cactus, which is used to make this carmine, the dye, the red dye. So here you have like this population of mealybugs on the cactus, and when you squash them, you get this, the red dye. Yes, you have a question?
So it makes the red dye, but what does it do to the cactus?
Well, there's this discussion. So last year I was at the conference on skill insects, um, and there was this whole discussion about the production of dye, but also that it can kill the cactus if the infestation gets too large. So there's like this debate. So what is like the perfect population structure?
But they encourage the.
They actually farm them in Mexico.
They do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Produce the dye.
Yeah.
So they're farming it. So are they impacting the natural cactus in Mexico?
No, they're very specific for the prickly pear.
Yeah. Or the nopalitos.
Yeah, for the opuntia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But where they, it doesn't, it's not decimating the cactus.
No,
the
because
natural
they
outside
harvest
the
it.
farm. But
Before it
outside the
gets to
farm,
that-
they're not.
Well, they're very specific to that cactus, though.
Yeah.
They have actually planted the cactus to have this dye.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's also a problem because they plant the cactus in other parts of the world. So like on the Canary Islands to produce the carmine. But yeah, it's not native there, the cactus. So there's also this discussion on should we do this? So yeah. And then some examples from Saba. So the skill insects we found so far. So we found this one, Ecolinatus tessellatus, in the Mary's Point gut. Yeah, in the gut of Mary's Point. So this is also a species that is actually cosmopolitan. So it's probably not native to Saba, but still interesting to find. And then this species, Phylacococcus howartoni, this is like a green soft scale. We found it in the garden of your garden actually, on the Spondias dulcis, the plant.
The golden apple?
Yes, with the large green apples. Yeah. So it's also covered in sooty mold, like all the black fungi.
Vietnamese name.
Yeah, but so we also found it so close to busy bee. You have like the croton plants, and they are full of this species. But this is actually called the croton scale insect, but it's not limited to croton. And then we found this one, and we don't know what it is. But it is in,
Cute. It's cute.
yeah, it's cute, but it's in the family Astrolechanidae. It's an all special, like a very, yeah, special family, but we don't know what it is. So yeah, this is for later for our research. So this was my part. Now I think Marco is gonna tell something about leafhoppers.
All right, good evening, everybody. Can everyone hear me in the back? Perfect. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm Marco. I'm a colleague of Lucas, actually. So I also work for the Plant Protection Organization of the Netherlands. But I study true hoppers, or cicadas. But the cicadas are officially the loud singing ones, and the true hoppers is a broader group. Aphids and psyllids. I will just give a little overview of what we found so far. I mean, it's just a week of fieldwork now, but we already found a lot of interesting stuff, actually. So what was known? 0 aphids, 0 psyllids, and 1 true hopper. Neopunana Saba. It's endemic for Saba, only known from Saba. And actually, I say 1 true hopper, but in 1956 and 1957, there was a one person, Dutch entomologist, René Cobben, and he collected for a year on all islands in the Dutch Caribbean. And he collected mainly bugs and true hoppers, but he never studied them. So there is this collection in the Netherlands, in Naturalis, and there's quite some material from Saba, but it has never been studied, and I'm starting to work on it now. But of course, the fieldwork results in many, many more species. So this Neopunana Saba was collected by René Cobben. It's the only species that's also described from his expedition in 1981 by a German entomologist. And it's only known from Saba, I already said that. And what do we have so far? Actually, I mainly focus on the true hoppers. That's quite important to say. Aphids, 8 to 10 species, might even be more at the moment, because today I already collected a bit more. And we put this together yesterday, so every day there's new stuff. It's great. Most likely all described and widespread species, actually, because aphids are not that common in the tropics. They are more common a bit north and south, where it's a bit colder, because they don't like the heat. So the few species you find in the tropics, they are usually very widespread. Then psyllids, 10 to 15 species. I think I'm now at 15 to 20 species, which are mostly local. They are really host plant specific. And I am pretty sure there are several undescribed species. So we're going to need some names for them. And then the true hoppers, they are the big winners, of course. With 60 to 70 species, maybe it will be 80 or 90 in the end of the expedition. Some are widespread, even some I've also found in the Netherlands, but only 1 or 2. And then many, many local species and several undescribed ones. Today I found an interesting one. It is in the Heliconia leaves. The young leaves, they are rolled up. And there's a specific genus, so a small group of true hoppers. They live in those. It's a bit moist in there, so I guess it's nice. And they feed just on those leaves. And I didn't really expect them here because they're not known from this part of the Caribbean. But the first one I tried immediately several specimens. I'm also looking at some new ecological information. So for many species, we know it's here, but we don't know on which plants it lives or where the nymphs could be found. So for this one, it's really common, Botryocera. We don't know the species yet. We need to study it in the lab. But we found many adults. But we know the nymphs should be underground, but the nymphs have never been described, at least. So we found this little hole. It was a sand mine along the trail to the Mount Scenery. And thought, there should be roots there. Maybe there's something. Normally you find them in caves or something. But this was enough. I found several nymphs actually feeding on the roots. So I collected them, and I think that's the first nymph of Botryocera that we will finally describe. And also the adults are often still found feeding on roots, because the nymphs always feed on roots. And then sometimes adults of this family, it's family 60-day, they're sometimes found in caves. And if they stay there long enough, in the end it will be a new species, and that happens quite often. But not here yet, not found. So the psilids. Well, I also work a bit on pest species, just like Lucas. And Diaphrina citri, also found in your garden, on citrus.
You seem to find only pests on my garden.
No, it's not only pests. But yeah, plants that get imported here usually don't support local fauna, of course. So you just import more exotic species. Like this one, it's in Europe. If we find this, we have a problem, but it's not there yet. But I only found one, actually. I should go back because I didn't collect it. I photographed it and jumped away.
Where did you find it?
Citrus.
Which one?
I don't know.
Was it in the middle of the garden or the ones that
No, close to the
It was
shop.
were they still in the pots?
next to the green apple, the Strontias juices.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is even lemon.
Okay. I will come back to look for it. And then Heteropsilla cubana. Well, Cuba, so it's from this area, but it's now really widespread because the host plant is now planted on many more parts of the world. Then the aphids. There are some strange ones, like this with huge siphons. Granidia psidi on guava, psidium, in the museum garden actually. And Aphis citricidus, also on citrus, not on your one. Actually on the mountain trail. It's also it's a really widespread species, but both of them are widespread because, as I said, aphids are usually widespread. And then the true hoppers.
Oh.
That's the reaction we should have. Yeah, there are many species, and most species we have to identify in the lab. We look at the genitalia actually of the male.
Find these on Saba? These are in Saba?
All photos that I show here are from Saba. Yeah. So really nice species. Paralebra, the one on top. There's only like one photo from Mexico of a similar looking species, but we don't know yet which one this is. Actually, it doesn't really fit any of the described species, so it might be something new. Then this one is really nice one. I also found it in the museum garden, and it is endemic.
In the museum garden or in the botanical garden?
The museum garden, yes.
Was it in a bromeliad?
No, it was. What was the name?
Like African tulip tree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it also lives on this African tulip tree, but it also lives on endemic species here, or native species in the Caribbean. It's described from Puerto Rico, and it's now found from Saba now actually to Florida. So it's quite local. And this one, well, it's really nice. I want to show it, but we have to see in the lab which species it really is.
Did
Yes.
you find any hopper nymphs?
Yeah, but we cannot identify them, so I usually let them go. Usually, except this one, of course, because I know it's something really interesting that we've never found before. And then here are a few more. Petusa, it's also from the Caribbean. It's a pest in Florida. There's everything in Florida. And Cubana strix was only known from St. Kitts. I already identified some specimens in the lab before I came here, so it was from the expedition in 1956. So I know which species it is, but I will double check, of course. Maybe there's another species here that was not collected at the moment. And this one will also become really useful for genetic analysis because it's in a really difficult group of species and we need genetics to solve it. So now we have fresh material, so we can do that. And I think that's it. So Micha is the next one.
Hello, I am Micha de Oliveira and I study crane flies. Which are these ones. So actually in Dutch they're called langpootmuggen, which means long-legged mosquitoes, but actually they're not mosquitoes and they don't bite. They just honestly, they don't even feed when they're adult, so only the larvae feed. And yeah, they just hang around and then they have sex and then they die. So quite a nice life, I think. So in the neotropics, so this is the area of Florida, Mexico down all the way into Argentina. It's a biogeographical area, and actually there's like more than 3,500 species of crane flies known, but I think this should be more than 10,000. So a lot of this is undescribed, and there's a lot of countries that are not well known. In the Caribbean, there is more than 250 species right now, and only 2 species are known from Saba. It is Gnophomia diasi and Trentopolia dominicana, and that the first one was actually found by Michiel last year, and we published it, and it was only known from Nevis, but now it was also found in Saba and in Puerto Rico. So this is a map of the publication of me and 2 colleagues, showing all the species known right now from every single island in the Caribbean. So you see some real gaps, like Dominica, Martinique, St. Vincent. There's 28 genera, 64 species, 26 species, 27. So you see there was some collecting going on there. But there's no reason that St. Lucia has only 1 species. There's just no entomologists there. So there are some gaps in between. Well, basically Puerto Rico and Dominica, and now Saba has 2, and this one was actually found a couple of years earlier, and that the larvae of that develop in the bromeliads. So there's I will go to the next slide. These are actually the insects. So all these larvae of these flies develop in wet-ish, moist soil or decaying material. So they're really cleaners of the environment. So every plant material, but also droppings and etc. etc. And this one Trentepolia develops in leaves that fall into these bromelias, and it gets stuck there, and then so it was found on top of Mount Scenery, where there's a lot of bromelias growing in the trees, but only 2 species until now. And I found, actually this is the species that Michiel found, but I found another species in this genus, and a lot of extra genera. Wait, whoop. So until now I found actually 10 genera, because today was another day uh, of collecting, and I think about 14 species, but this is only 2 weeks, and I think double or triple is easily achievable. But they're actually quite nice species here, with a lot of colorful wings, and they're not the best models because of their legs, and they go all if they're dead. Yeah, these are dead. Yeah, because I don't have a nice camera like Marco does, and I collect them, and yeah, that's the pictures I get. So yeah, and I don't know the species yet, only that they are species. They might be new for science, and they get a nice name. So if you have suggestions for names to give, except Sabaensis, because every single one will be called that, be my guest. I think that was it. So thank you very much.
So I'm sure they're happy to answer any questions. I have a first question. Was this normal, or were you surprised at how many things you were finding, or how did that compare to when the people went to Bonaire? Is it so different because we're moist and humid compared to a desert place?
Yes. For my species, they, as I said,
Yep. As Oh yeah. So as I said, my species develop in moist material, whatever that may be. So in Bonaire, I had to work really, really, really hard, and actually scour Google Maps for places that have moisture and are not a desert. And there, I think I found 10 species in 2 weeks. And here, yeah, I mean, I found 10 species in a day. So, yeah, for me, it's much more nice here. And that there's change, some really cloud forest to rainforest, and also the dry forest and lower. It makes it makes it really diverse for the actual area that it is. Because what is it, like 4 kilometers or 3 miles, I guess. So I have no idea. So I don't know. What about you?
oh yeah. So for my species, I just looked at true hoppers actually on Bonaire, and I think I've got around 70 species in the end. But here now, just in 8 days, it's more than 70. And as Micha said, it's a smaller island actually. So I don't really know where I will end up here, because I have to see it in the lab. Maybe some things that I think is just the one species now will be 4 or 5 species in the lab. So it can easily increase. So this island is definitely more diverse than Bonaire. Yeah, definitely.
Of the male scale, that look like insects. wings, how large are they?
They are very small. Very small.
Okay, just like a period on a paper, you know, like
They're like
1 millimeter.
yeah, 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Come and look in my garden.
Yeah. But you have like on Saba, you have like the like Michiel. His first slide was like this skill insect with the huge egg sac. It's like a banana, like a white banana.
Okay, that one I saw.
So this female is already large, and the male is also large for a male skill insect. So it's like if the female is small, the male is also small.
Yes.
So
No, I was curious about it because I never knew that I'm familiar with scale and dealing bugs and everything, but I never realized those were only the females that I see.
yes, exactly.
You never see the males. The
No,
very tiny things flying around.
no. But sometimes, so when you have like a infestation in like a hothouse and you
Yes.
put up sticky traps, then you get like the males.
That's how you find it.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But like the whole taxonomy on skill insects is based on the adult females because those you find.
Yes.
So you go looking for like you go in the field, you turn around leaves, and you find the adult females
Yes.
and not the males.
Okay.
So there's like not much known about the males actually. No.
Thank you.
No more questions?
You have a question?
Well, I don't actually have, well, I kind of have a question, but I brought you a present,
Oh, thank you. Oh,
which is it's a scale bug that only attacks my indigo.
okay,
It's very specific. I've never seen it on anything else,
okay.
and it's very difficult. I've sprayed it with
Everything.
everything.
Yeah.
Tobacco water and soap and neem and
Where did you find? So where in your
in
garden?
my yard. Yeah.
And where is it?
It's
Windward side.
Yeah, windward side.
Okay.
I mean, you can come visit me.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
But
Thank you.
I want to know how to kill it.
Well-
Okay, so we need to identify what it is so I can kill it, so it doesn't keep killing my indigo plant.
Well, we actually find so when I look at these skill insects of Saba under the microscope, you see like a lot of them are parasitized by wasps. So there are like some natural enemies already present on Saba, but not enough apparently
Not to kill
for
it.
your indigo tree.
Yeah.
But thanks.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, if we, if you want to come over at some point, so we can check it out.
Thanks. Yeah.
So I'm sure our scientists will be happy to answer more questions if you want to come up to them individually. But if we can have a round of applause for Amahara. For our scientists who took time out of their lives to come here, thank you very much. And thank you for supporting our sponsor. Make sure you pay your bill, be a nice person, and stay for dinner. Okay? Is that good? Anyone
Yeah.
else?
Thanks.